Yesterday, President Trump indicated that he had a lengthy conversation with the president of Mexico about migration, immigration, about illegal immigration. And both of them have come out and said, yes, they did. He says that he's solving the problem. She says they're getting somewhere. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. I contend that President Trump was elected because of Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott is the one that forced immigrants around the country, and he said, I want every state to be a border state. I want every city to be a border city. And that made it an issue in 50 states. That made an issue everywhere in this country, not just Texas, not just Arizona. And that got Trump elected. I contend, after a conversation with a small business owner a couple weeks ago, illegal immigration will never be fixed, completely fixed. And I've talked to several small business owners about it, and they say, you're right. And here's why. The reason is, I had a small business owner I talked to 2 weeks ago, said, Jeffrey, he said, I have about 50 employees, 8 of them who work for me. I know are here illegally. And I said, but how are they on your payroll? He said, they have Social Security numbers, which allows me to hire them. I hire them. I pay them $30 an hour. They're like any other employee I have, but I know they're here illegally. I just know it. But they're good citizens. They're doing their job. They're making nice money. They're doing that to support their families. And he said, Jeff, I pay 6.5% of what I pay them. I pay to Social Security Administration and Medicare. And they also contribute 6.5%. That's short of 15%. They are keeping Social Security afloat. Illegal immigrants. I started doing the research on this a couple weeks ago. I've really dug into this, and I saw a story about the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy that found that undocumented residents in the United States contributed $25.7 billion into Social Security funds in 2022 and $6 billion into Medicare. Undocumented immigrants paid almost $100 billion, or roughly $9,000 per person in taxes in 2022. You see, illegals who are here and have a Social Security number and working in businesses under the radar, they are paying into Social Security and know they will never take money out of it. So they are contributing to Social Security and kicking that can down the road so that those people who are on Social Security doesn't get changed. So the COLA, the cost of living raises, can continue. We have a Social Security problem in this country, and it is solvent. So the Social Security Administration is solvent in part on the backs of illegal immigrants, and that's why it will never get fixed. We took a call from Sandra a minute ago that was absolutely hopping mad and said it's illegal and it's crap and doesn't agree with it. I hear you. I understand you. I'm not telling you I'm in control of that. I'm just telling you that's the facts. And when I've told people this story, they're like, huh, I never knew that. I never thought about that. We took a call a moment ago from a gentleman named Bill from Pottsboro that said, Jeff, you're spot on. I totally agree with you. You're right. And that's also why the Democrats want increased minimum wages, because the more that they can pay those illegal immigrants, the more money they collect in taxes. My buddy Rick is down from Nashville. Rick joined me. He's in studio with me because he came down for the weekend for Thanksgiving. And on the backs of that, Bill, Rick said, Democrats love inflation. Rick, explain real quick in 30 seconds or so what you meant by that.
Well, and I'm not so sure I could...
just real quickly. What you?
Yeah, say it's strictly Democrats. I mean, but they love inflation. The interest paid out and collected on bonds changes during inflation and actually helps. It could help reduce the debt or the deficit. Does not, because they just increase the spending. So if during these times we could decrease the spending a little bit, it would help. It would help pay the deficit down during high interest rates.
You're a small business owner in Tennessee. You work with a couple hundred crews. I asked you if you know that some of the folks you work with from other contractors employ illegals, and you said all of them do.
Oh yes, especially in the construction business.
All of them do.
So, yes. I mean, basically, we do not have enough people in construction in this country let you know, in Nashville, Tennessee, Oracle's coming to town. We already know there's not going to be enough housing. Oracle's going to have to bring in their own construction crews to build the housing for Oracle. So basically shows you that pretty much across the United States, there is a shortage of construction workers.
Small business owner, you're someone involved in business, you can validate what we're talking about or poke holes in it. I'd love to hear from you at 800-288-9227. That's 800-288-WBAP. You agree, you disagree? I want to hear your perspective, like Bill from Arlington. Bill, thanks for hanging in there through the break on that. I appreciate you holding. Give me your 2 cents worth on this.
Not a problem. Thank you so much. I want to point out 2 things. Number one, the idea that the illegals are paying $25.7 billion in, and this kind of keeps Social Security going. The problem with that is that they pay in $25.7 billion in 2022, but Social Security paid out $1.2 trillion. We know the whole thing's a Ponzi scheme, and so the truth of the matter is that's just pushing the date where we go bankrupt forward just a little bit, maybe a year or so.
That's correct.
For some number of decades now, we've been about 10 years away from the whole thing going bankrupt. Every now and then, Congress puts in a little fix that pushes it a little bit forward, raising the retirement age, et cetera. That's going to happen again. But here's the key. You don't really solve this problem with the illegal immigration. I mean, Sandra is the personification of the Trump revolution, right? That's exactly what people are fed up about, and they want to change. I will argue that what we need to do is change this outdated immigration law that was passed in 1965, the Hart-Celler Act, that was pushed by Ted Kennedy. It was his crowning achievement. And what we need to do is reform that, and we need to change immigration so that only people who can be hired by American employers will be allowed to come here. Those people will want to be Americans and be part of the process. Even people like Sandra will accept them. What we don't want is people that want to feed off our system. And my point about it is we can change the law. Now, it's not going to happen unless we succeed in the off-year election in 2026 and achieve greater numbers in both houses of Congress. Trump and the Republicans must behave in such a way that gain the confidence of the American people and have those kinds of gains. Then we can pass a landmark revolution in immigration law by basing it on employment, not just on who your relatives are. No more chain migration, none of that stuff. Only workers in their immediate family. And then we let the employers decide who they want to hire. This will rebalance our labor markets in the United States. And by the way, just so you know, I'm not an employer per se, but I am a tax accountant, and I have a lot of clients that have payroll taxes, and I know a lot about this. And by the way, I'm 76 years old, and I've been involved in these issues since 1964 when I first became politically active. So,
Bill, thank you for listening. Thank you for calling. I appreciate you being a part of the show. Thanks for calling. Got to hit a break in just a minute. Rick, you're shaking your head and writing me notes the whole time while he's talking. Jump in, Rick. What were you going to say?
Well, Bill, I just totally agree with you.
Do or don't?
I do.
He's spot on.
Yes, exactly.
We need to fix immigration. Everybody in this country, I think, would say that.
And it's not so much going to the extremes like maybe some other countries like Australia and stuff, but do get back to where we are bringing people in who are going to contribute to the success of America. And by the way, there are so many people waiting in line outside this country that are set for each country who may come in, citizens from each country who may come into this country.
We've got to hit a quick break on the other side of that. We'll continue your conversation. I see Eddie and Trey on hold. We'll get to you in just a matter of minutes. If you'd like to weigh in on this, there's 2 open phone lines at 800-288-9227. That's 800-288-WBAP. Again, Social Security solvency is being kept afloat right now, partially on the backs of illegal immigrants. And that's part of the reason why immigration won't ever really, the whole deportation of 13 million, 15 million people won't happen exactly as Trump detailed it, because we need them here. Hold your thought, Rick. We'll get to it after this. Got to hit a quick break. On the other side of this, we'll continue the conversation. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. In for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM. The election was turned on immigration. The economy was part of that also. I think they tie together, and I think it comes back to, I really think they're tied together. And it comes back to what a small business owner said to me a couple weeks ago. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And what he said to me was, you know what, Jeff? He said he had it from a conversation from somebody in the Reagan administration who said immigration will never get fixed because illegal immigrants, we need them here. Businesses want them here, but more so government wants them here because they're contributing to Social Security. They contribute to Social Security and Medicare through payroll taxes, and they can never withdraw from it. So they're part of the contribution system, but they're not part of the payment system. So they are helping to keep the Social Security Administration solvent. And a buddy of mine, Rick, is in town from up in Nashville so he's here for the weekend. He's a small business owner. He works with several hundred contractors across the state of Tennessee in a small business. And I said to him, how many employees do you don't have employees yourself, but you 1099 and have contractors you work with. How many different employees are you aware of that you intertwine with? And he said 250, 260 or so. I said, do you know of them, some that are illegal? He said, yeah, but they're not my employees. And he knows quite a few of them. And he said, Jeff, you're spot on with this. You're spot on with what you're saying. It's reality. That's why immigration will never get fixed. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. Joining me is my buddy Rick. He's down from Nashville. I want to hear your perspective. I want to hear your talk. The reality is immigration, I agree with that, will never be fixed because of that in part. We do need to fix immigration. We welcome legal immigrants, but illegal immigration, no. I said to my small business owner a few weeks ago, how do you fix it? He said, here's what I do. He said, my employees who are here illegally would gladly pay a one-time fee of $4,000, and that $4,000 go to Social Security. And from there on out, the promise to them is they don't get deported unless they commit crimes, heinous crimes, and they get deported. But as long as they're here and they work hard and they contribute to Social Security and they never withdraw from it, they are contributing to everything that's good about America. And I've been processing it, thinking about it. I've been researching it. And you know what? He's spot on with what he's saying. I said, would you come on the radio and talk about it? He said, oh, hell no. No way in hell. Because it's a hotbed topic and I don't want my business on the radio. That's what he said. I want to hear your perspective. 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. Gregory from Southlake, thank you for holding on for a while. I appreciate it. What's your thought?
Your argument is not only wrong, it's dead wrong. Here's the numbers. In 2023, U.S. Social Security took in $1.335 trillion. Okay? Mm-hmm. Assuming your $25 billion number is right, that's 1.87%. Okay? Mm-hmm. There was $3 billion. Let me run through these numbers because you're going to go to a break, and unless you're going to hold me over the break, I really want to get time.
Go ahead. Hit me with the numbers.
Okay.
And by the way, you're comparing 2023 to my 2022. The latest numbers I could find is 2022.
And the 2023 number is not that much different. Anyway, okay. So there was about $3 million in fraud, Social Security fraud, that was fraudulent payments, et cetera. If you put that in an inflation calculator, it comes out to $4 billion in 2024. So it roughly takes your $25 billion down to $21 billion, or 1.5%. Okay? Now, I don't agree with your $25 billion number, but let's say that's right. Okay? New York City that's still 1.5% of the total income to Social Security. You're missing the big number, which is how much money Social Security takes in. Okay? $21 billion. New York City spent $5 billion supporting the illegals. I bet they've spent close to that in Chicago, L.A., San Francisco. Texas has spent billions on trying to secure the border. That's going to eat up that $21 billion in the New York minute. So they are contributing nothing. They are here illegally, and your buddy who is employing them, his assets ought to be seized and used to fund ICE.
But Gregory, here's what I'd say about that. What I said a moment ago, and thank you for calling, and I appreciate your opinion on that. I hear exactly what you're saying. I am not saying that illegals are not a drain on social services, because they are. Because the ones that don't have insurance are using our hospital systems as their doctor's offices. Their children are gone to our schools, which is a drain on social services in a different way. I'm here to tell you, though, they are contributing to Social Security. They are not exactly keeping it totally afloat. That's not what I'm saying. I'm telling you they're kicking the can down the road. I'm telling you because they are contributing to Social Security because they're employed here, that is keeping the Congress from having to deal with that issue today. That's my point. They're going to have to deal with it at some point in time. But it's keeping those in office today from having to deal with it today. And that's my point. And the reality is there's not a person in Congress, whether it be the Senate or the House, and the President of the United States doesn't want to be the one. None of those branches wants to deal with truly fixing Social Security, but it needs to be fixed. None of them do. None of them do. So if they totally did away with illegals in this country who are contributing to Social Security, that speeds up the process in which they have to deal with that issue. So they're creating more of a gaping wound than they have to create. My buddy who I was talking about and what you just said about his assets should be frozen in that whole thing, that's exactly why he doesn't want to go public. It's exactly why he wouldn't want to talk, because he doesn't want that spotlight. But he's not the bad guy here, because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of guys like that across this country who are employing people that have a Social Security number, but in their heart, in their head, they know they're here illegally. But they're doing what they need to do to run their business. So is the bad guy my one buddy that has shared the story with me? Or is the bad guy the thousands and thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of businesses who are doing it? And consumers like you and I who are hiring some of those contractors in the trades, and some of them are here illegally. So if you really want to shut off that supply line, shut it off at the consumer level. Right? My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. I got to hit the bottom of the hour news with Sean Allen in the newsroom. We're continuing this conversation. My buddy Rick is sitting next to me. He's in town from Nashville. He's sitting there getting all squirmy on me, making all kinds of notes. He wants to share some things. We'll hit that on the other side of it. He's got a long list of things he wants to cover based off what you've said and some others. But I want to hear what you have to say. For those of you we just took a call from a CPA, for those of you in the business industry who understand what I'm talking about illegal immigration, in part funding what's going on in Social Security, I'd love to hear your perspective. Clue us in. 800-288-9227. It's 800-288-WBAP. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Westside Jeff is the name. It's the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday. Big football weekend this weekend, not only the NFL, but college. I always say in the NFL, this is the weekend where it really gets serious because playoff contenders become playoff contenders and imposters get discovered. That's this weekend. Pretty big weekend in football, both college and in pro, but also high school football, state playoffs going off around the state. So good weekend for sports, good weekend for guys, good weekend to have conversation. It starts today, by the way, a good weekend in government with Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, who flew down to Mar-a-Lago to have dinner with Donald Trump tonight to have a conversation about tariffs. I'm sure immigration came up. And the problem there is, quite honestly, the issue there is Justin Trudeau is coming up for re-election soon, and his party is losing in the polls. So he's got to turn things around. That's part of the reason he jumped on a plane and flew down to Mar-a-Lago, because he's being challenged on the other side. He's got his butt in a grinder, and it looks like he could lose. So hence, he's got to do something different, sort of like what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris tried to do, but they tried to pull a Hail Mary out of the rabbit out of the hat at the very end. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. You can connect with me across social media at Westside Jeff on Facebook, Insta, and also on X. I had a conversation a couple weeks ago with a small business employer. He would not come on the radio. He would not allow me to share details because he doesn't want to be outed. He doesn't want to be shamed. He doesn't want cancel culture. He said to me he did work a while back for someone who was part of the Reagan administration. They were talking immigration, and the guy said to him, immigration will never be fixed. And my buddy said, why? And the Reagan administration guy said, because it's the immigrants who are here illegally, who secure Social Security numbers and walk into employers, and they get hired in at $30 an hour, a lot of times in trades and construction and 1099 work, that they're paying out 6.5% of their income to Social Security. And the employers are also paying 6.5%. That's 13% of the income. Now do the math. $30 an hour times 48, call it 50 hours a week. How much money that is times 13% of the paycheck? They're contributing thousands of dollars a year to Social Security Administration, and those contributors will never take a penny out of it because they're not eligible for it. So they're paying into something that they'll never get money out of. I said to this guy, I said, why would they do that? He said, because they're here on the backs of freedom. I said, so how do you fix it? He said, I'll tell you how to fix it. My employees, the ones who I know who are here illegally, but they got a Social Security number and they're good, and I'm employing them, every one of them would pay a $4,000 one-time fine for the purpose of getting government off them back and keep ICE from really coming down on them and deporting them. As long as they are good citizens and they don't commit crimes, they continue to pay their taxes. Charge them a $4,000 fine. So bear with me for a second. Well, it's $4,000, $5,000, $3,000. Allow them to pay a one-time fee to be here under some kind of a status that allows them to remain in America, to contribute to Social Security and all, as long as they don't withdraw from it. And as long as they obey the laws and rules of the United States of America. I started researching it. I've spent a couple of weeks on this online, looking at stuff, talking to folks, and it looks pretty legitimate. A friend of mine, family friend, is in town for the weekend for Thanksgiving. Rick is a small business owner. He doesn't have employees himself, but he works in the construction trades across the state of Tennessee through the Mid-South area. And he works with a lot of businesses. Now, I said to Rick, do you know businesses that have undocumented workers like this? He said, Jeff, it's very, very common, and they know it. They know it. And what you're saying is spot on. It's absolutely correct. And I said, do they care about the fact they're here illegally? He said, Jeff, in their eyes, they're here legally because they have they have a Social Security number. They are doing work that is needed, and they are contributing to Social Security Administration and know that they'll never get money out of it. It's a common fact in the small business arena. It just is. I said, the average guy doesn't know it. Let's talk about it. So we've been talking about it. 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP is the number. I'd love to hear your perspective, your thoughts, your ideas, especially if you're a small business owner or involved in small businesses, that you can add some context to what we're talking about. Eddie from Fort Worth, I appreciate you holding on as long as you have. Thank you very much. I want to give you your due and give you your time. You're on with Westside Jeff and my buddy Rick.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. I am a small-time business owner here in Texas, and it's fairly common to, at least that I know, that small businesses will hire illegal immigrants. And what Rick said earlier was completely true. They don't care that they're not going to take any money out of the Social Security fund, because in their eyes, it's already mission accomplished. I'm in America. I got a job. That's all they care about. Now, the problem is, you're 100% right. It's never going to be fixed, at least not 100%. The reason being, yeah, the government doesn't want to fix it. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, they'll say whatever they want. I mean, Trump will say, we're going to deport all these people, or we want to fix immigration. It's not going to happen. And the state of affairs right now, I can live with. It's not necessarily my ideal scenario, but the thing that really worries me is how I've seen Trump be so vocally supportive of the idea of stapling green cards to diplomas of a 4-year degree. In my opinion, it's going to exacerbate the issue exponentially. And now you have, and I'm telling you this, it's not going to be our Latin neighbors, at least not the majority of them, going to be taking advantage of this, right? I won't say who I think it is, but I think that we're going to have a way larger immigration problem if he does, in fact, go through with this. Again, people say things, you never know what's going to be true. In the first quarter of Trump's presidency, his next presidency, he might tell us that they already deported 15 million. You don't know if that's true. It's just what he said. But I 100% agree. I really think that there's a reason why it's never going to be fixed. It's because that they don't have to pay back. It's basically free money for the government. And what the other gentleman was saying earlier, he said it was a huge problem, and their assets should be seized. Businesses to do that. That's not going to happen either. I understand him and Sandra, what they were saying. They were both very upset about it. But at the bottom line, they don't care. They, being the government, they don't care what we think. They don't care what we want to happen. They are going to do what makes money. And if this makes money and this sets us back from, Social Security imploding in our face, they're going to do it. And it's going to be the way it is until a solution comes around, a feasible solution that's long term. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But that's my 2 cents, man. Thanks,
Eddie. My buddy Rick keeps moving around, jumping around here, writing notes. I know he's got some questions. Rick, jump in, man. Ask him what you're talking about.
Eddie, I hear you. There is a shortage of people that want to work in this country. Would you agree?
I would agree. Yeah, I really would, actually.
I find it very hard. We're running short of people.
Especially in the trades.
Yes, we used to have 26 crews. We're down to 6. These are people that have been deported, people who elected to go back on their own. But Eddie explained something to me. Well, I didn't catch the part about the green card stapled to the degree.
I didn't either, Eddie. Explain that. I'm not sure what you're saying there.
Okay, sure. So there's a proposition for an immigration policy where if an immigrant comes to America and they complete a 4-year degree, they could be eligible to have a green card stapled to their diploma, meaning that they will have residency and partial citizenship in America to work. Now, the government's stance on this is that if we have these immigrants now in America that were taught in America, instead of sending them home and having them compete against us in the market, now they'll work for us. So that's their idea of it. But in my opinion, I think that is, again, not what's going to be the case. I think that what this is going to allow is for basically sort of another back door to keep a steady flow of immigrants coming in.
But the question there, Eddie, is how many of those folks are going to want to commit 4 years to a college education and continue to attain that?
Well, think about how long it takes for a regular illegal immigrant who comes over here, how long it might take for them to acquire a green card by whatever means they want to pursue.
Yeah, I get it.
And how long they stay here illegally. So now if they have, they want to do a 4-year degree at it doesn't have to, they don't have to spend that much money either, and they can get loans. So they're going to be here for 4 years anyway.
And Rick has another question for you on that. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, Eddie, I'm getting the feeling that you don't think that's a great idea.
I don't think it's a great idea.
No, it's not, because already the government has pushed. They've pushed degrees on people, made the money available, and it just flows like water. And what happens? I mean, what's a degree cost you nowadays? It's not the degrees we need desperately. I mean,
right.
Yes, there are professions. There are shortage of professions. But the trades are suffering dearly.
Yeah.
And so when you call a plumber out and he's charging you $150 for a service call, why do you think he's doing that? Because he can do it.
Because he can. And Eddie, to your point, and thank you for calling. I appreciate you being part of the show. I got to hit a break, but on the other side of this, I'll share this. What you just said is correct and accurate, and I have a very specific story that I'm associated with, kind of within my family, that I'll explain a little further what you're talking about, because I think that's important. But there's some misnomers there. My 2 cents worth. I'll give you an opinion on that. That's coming up in about 3.5 minutes. Thank you for calling. Thanks for being part of the show, and I appreciate your thoughts on that. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. You want to weigh in on this? 800-288-9227. 800-288-WBAP. Westside Jeff is my name. Sitting in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Eddie from Fort Worth, thanks for calling. I do appreciate your 2 cents worth on this and your call. Interesting that you had said that your concern is green cards stapled to diplomas for college degrees. I told you I have some experience there that hits close to home. Long story, I'll make as quick as I can. My daughters went to college up in Kentucky-Tennessee border, a real small Bible Baptist college. My oldest daughter, on her third year, called me and said, "Hey, Dad, my daughters are swimmers," and said, "There's a young man that swims for our swim team. He's a student from Russia, and he swims on the swim team. There's an international gaming expo in town. Can he come to the house, spend the weekend, and go to this international gaming expo?" And I said, "Yes." His name is Vlad. He's from Russia, barely spoke any English when he first came here. He was recruited to come to the United States to swim for this college because he's a world-class swimmer. In fact, he tried to compete, time qualify for the Russian Olympic team, swimming team. He was 1/100th of a second away from qualifying at the next level in the Olympic time trials, so he didn't make it, but he was that close. Vlad would give his left arm to be able to stay in America for the rest of his life and become American. He wants to become an American citizen. He's been here now 9 years. He went to school for 4 years. His student visa ran out. He was supposed to go back to Russia. He did. He got that renewed so he could come back to America, and he went through and got his MBA. After his MBA, he didn't want to go for a doctorate. He wanted to stay here. He actually fell in love, got married. He now lives up in Chicago. His wife is an American who is in med school. And after the first year, they're going to find out where her residency will be. He is going to do everything he can to become an American citizen. And that comes back to what, Eddie, you had said, and that is because he graduated and he's got an MBA and all, he wants to become American citizen. Because he's Russian, it's a little different animal than any other nationality, but he's going to do everything. I've adopted him as a son almost. In fact, he's going to be in town and spend a week with us in January. I love Vlad, and I want everything in the world good to happen to him because he's a good egg, and our country would be better off with people like Vlad in our country, and he will be. So that's what you're talking about. 800-288-9227 is a phone number. We're talking about Social Security. Immigration will never get fixed in part because of that. Trey from Duncanville, you've been on hold for quite some time. Thank you for holding. Sorry to hold you so long, but wanted to get your input on this too, Trey. Thanks.
Yes, well, thank you for taking my call. I essentially agree with what you've been saying. However, I have a little bit different perspective, and I would encourage your friend Rick to write this down. Besides the Bible, there are 3 books that I highly recommend that you take the time to read and write notes about. As I previously discussed, was Edward Gibbon's The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Rome by Robert Hughes, and The Return of the Gods by Jonathan Cahn. They all have one common denominator in them. And when you look at society, in the ancient period, Rome, and in the current day of today, the West, Europe, and the United States. There is one thing that stands out above anything else, and it is the fact that we have a decline in morals and ethics.
Spot on.
Immigration, Social Security, and everything else are just symptoms of what this really comes down to. This election was really about what kind of society we want. Do we want a society based upon moral Christian ethics, or do we want a paganistic, hedonistic, anything goes society? And that is my perspective. If you go back and especially read The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, both Augustus and Constantine shouted to the high heavens to always have to keep the morals and the ethics at a premium, because otherwise society will collapse eventually. And I think this election, when you talked about immigration and people talk about a decline in the number of people available, may I remind you, on January 31st, 1973, abortion became illegal. And as a result, we've had over 70 million, roughly estimated, to be 70 million people slaughtered and butchered. There are no longer citizens that are not paying into the system. Europe has parallels to that. That's why they're wanting all these people coming from the third world to pay for the system. And
back to what government sometimes want is a globalistic society, and Trump is a threat to that, no doubt about it. Trey, you got about a minute. Wrap up if you can.
Well, I was going to say that when you have a moral, the Bible says basically, when you have unrighteous rulers, the people will suffer. When you have a righteous rulers and a righteous society, people will benefit. And it's just, that to me is very obvious. And we have a chance to right the ship, so to speak.
Well, Trey, thank you for listening. I appreciate you listening and appreciate your calling. Rick, you're showing me something. What's give 30 seconds on that? What's your
Hi, Trey. Thanks a lot. But and I'm familiar with what you're talking about. But can't we trace that back? I mean, to a giant leap of immorality when back around 64, 65, or around that time, President Johnson.
Yeah.
It was the start of the breakup of the American family.
And that's continued ever since. And that's part of what is a problem today. But back to my point, and that is this election, every exit poll that has ever come out and the post-election study is it was immigration and the economy that drove this election. I don't care. Yeah, you can talk about all the other issues, but the number one issue in this election was immigration, crime. They're intertwined, and number two was the economy. Those two things are 1 and 1A. That's the reality. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. We're talking about immigration. Won't ever get fixed, in part because they need illegal immigrants to contribute to Social Security. Coming up the next hour, I want to also get into at what point in time did it become acceptable to go into retail stores and look like you just rolled out of bed? At what point in time did it go in that it was acceptable for women to have their hair, step out of the shower, put towels around their hair, throw on a pair of sweats with holes in it, go braless, and go grocery shopping or go Christmas shopping? It's amazing what I've seen in stores. I'd love to hear your stories of what you've seen in stores. It's amazing to me. I'll tell you more about it after the top of the hour news. Sean Allen next in the newsroom. Coming up in 7 minutes, we'll continue the conversation about immigration, but also the acceptability of poor dress in public places. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP.